Hello there. So in the last video I made a leather strap for a camera and that felt kind of basic, was a bit of an easier project. So I figured I would try to level that up just a little bit and make it a little bit more complicated. So here we're going to start off working with some paracord. So the first thing we want to do is just burn the ends of these two collars together so we get, one string basically of paracord, and from there we're going to tie some snake knots, I believe it's called. So it took me a little while to figure out how to do this properly, but I'm going to try to show it off here. So first you can create a little loop with one of the collars. And then you want to take the other collared string and pull that through that same loop, but not all the way. You want to leave it halfway out like this, and then you can just take it with your thumb, so you get this kind of like a double loop basically. And then you want to kind of throw that string over your hand, then pull it through that initial loop that we created. And from there you can just pull the knot tight. Kind of like this, and that is our first snake knot. And from there we just want to continue. So create a loop, pull that orange thread through, throw it over, and then take it under and out. And then you just repeat this over and over until you created basically a series of knots. And it's pretty easy to go back and forth with this. So if you do mess up and something doesn't turn out the way you want, you can easily just untie it and try again. I've found it being a little bit tricky in the beginning to get it right when you pull it under and through itself there, but eventually I think I got a hang of it. And then as you keep working, you also pick up speed, so it's quite time consuming in the beginning, but then once you got it down, when you've done like 10 of them maybe, it starts to go a lot faster. So once we're done, we just want to melt these ends together as well. And here is the finished product. So next step is we just want to mark out a piece of leather. So this is the piece of leather that will connect to the quick release clip we're going to use to attach to the camera. I had to cut it down a little bit smaller, but that's fine. I'm just gonna punch some holes through it, and then we're gonna attach that to the paracord and just sew that up. So I'm not gonna show you exactly how that went because it was pretty ugly sewing just to get it all together. Trying to punch it through the leather and the paracord strap was not the best. So instead I came up with the idea that I would just create just another piece of leather that I can wrap around the strap to make it a little bit prettier. So once I cut out a piece of leather that will fit, I just dunked it in water for around 45 minutes, an hour, somewhere around there. And then while it's still wet, I just want to mold it to fit the shape. And then this is maybe my favorite type of sewing leather together, and that is just using an awl to punch holes through the leather while it's still wet, which is pretty easy to do. This also means that when the leather dries, it will also shrink a bit and really take the shape of what it's wrapped around. So I think that will look really good for this. And then for stitching it all together, we're just gonna do some saddle stitches, and we're gonna start with some back stitches. So we're starting one hole too far forward, so to say, and then we're gonna go back to the first hole, and then again we're gonna change direction and go all the way down, and that will just make that connection stronger. And we'll do that on both ends. And as we go here, we're just punching a new hole with a awl, and then pulling the thread through, punching a new hole, and so on. And I'm being careful here to not pierce the thread when I pull it through the hole. So what you can do is just leave the loop a little bit outside, push the needle through, and then you can pull on the other thread just to make sure you didn't pierce it, and then you can tie it up, and then you can keep going. And here we got two finished sides. The darker one is still a bit wet, and the lighter one has had time to dry. You can see it also molded a bit more to the shape. And next up is cutting out the actual strap that will go around your neck. So I got this strap that's already kind of the right width. I'm just gonna cut it to length. And then I need to figure out a way, how do I connect the end of the paracord to this piece of leather? So I experimented a little bit back and forth, but in the end I figured I will just make a small hole in the center of the leather, and then I can pull the paracord through. And because it's kind of threaded almost in the way that it's shaped, so you can kind of like, you know, just keep pressing it and rotating it to pull it through. And I think this will look pretty nice, because that way it will kind of just be the leather molded around the paracord with no real visible connection. Well, that's the idea anyway. Let's see how it turns out. So I'm also using this grooving tool just to make a groove for the seam, because you do not want the seam to stick out from the leather, especially if it's going to be on your shoulder and rubbing. So it's just to protect the thread. So once we got all the holes punched and we got grooves for the thread, it's just time to give it a little bit of color and then some edge coat. And then once the edge coat is dry, we can just go ahead and burnish the ends. I also take that opportunity to treat the leather with some leather oil, and then also burnish the inside, like the raw side of the leather. So time for a little test fit and see how it looks now that it's been colored. I also need to figure out how to actually connect the paracord to the leather, because it's not enough to just sew on the sides, because you can still pull the paracord just straight through that hole. So I need to find a way to connect it more securely. So what I came up with is that you can thread a needle through the paracord without actually piercing the paracord, because there's a little bit of space in the knot. So I took just 4 of these knots, put a needle through each 4 of these, And then I can use the position of the needle to mark out on the leather where I can punch a thread, or where I can punch a hole where I can then pull the thread through. So just gonna do some saddle stitching through the leather and the paracord, and I think that will definitely hold it securely enough. And then we just need to cut a little groove for the seams as well. So there we go, that should definitely be strong enough. And this will be on the inside, touching your shoulder, so it will not be visible on the camera strap at all. And next, we just want to stitch up the leather again. So here we go back to some trusted saddle stitches. And once again, we're just careful here so we do not pierce the thread. And there we go. Once everything is stitched up, we have a finished camera strap. And I'm kind of pleased with this one because I set out to do something more advanced than in my previous video. You have like a little bit more elaborate camera strap, and I think this is definitely it. I really do like the contrast between the paracord and the darker leather. I also like how the leather then molds around the paracord. I think that turned out pretty great, actually. And even if it wasn't initially planned, I also like the piece of leather that I had to mold around the attachment to the quick strap. I think it also adds a bit of flair to it. It just breaks out with a different color. So with that, thank you very much for watching.